Hello, December 16th, 2021. Welcome to the Delicious Recipe here on UPRN, New Orleans Talk Radio. And if you're watching along there live, you can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, and it's UFO Paranormal Radio, UFO Paranormal Radio, and I believe it's also on the UFO Extraterrestrials and Gods. I believe also we're on Twitch on the UFO Paranormal Radio UPRN, and Facebook as well, UPRN. Is there any other I'm missing there, Lorilei?
Streaming on my page, I think. I think it
Okay,
is, but it
and
may not be. But no, that's pretty good. Tell them just to come
okay,
join us on YouTube. We can see it because sometimes you can't see this stuff on Facebook.
right, and also there too as well. And comments will go by there. We'll see what how they work out. If I don't see it or whatever, we'll try and see how it goes here, anyways. So, like I said, December 16th, we're about 9 days away from Christmas, and I guess the Christmas. Well, I just started a new job there, so I'm working in a little small family-run grocery store, and a lot of people coming in and rushing in and getting their stuff. And one thing I've noticed is, or just even overheard and stuff like that, is we're going to talk about a bunch of things. There's prices, and you're a very avid shopper there, going out and bargain hunting and stuff like that, Laura Lee. So what have you noticed out there shopping this year as compared to other years? Because you got to figure here too, with this is that we're still going through this pandemic that's happening, and a lot of people had lost their jobs. Some people have got
Hmm.
back their jobs. There's some people. It's been sort of really tough, I guess you would say, for a lot of people. And have you noticed that? I guess or not the demand, but the amount of availability of items has sort of been reduced, and the prices have been drastically raised. I'll let you go with
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Well, first of all, tell people I'm Lorilei, your better half. I'm also a host here on UPRN on Monday nights on my own show, The Angel Rock. And as for shopping, yes, I do all the shopping in the home. What I have noticed since we had Canadian Thanksgiving at the beginning of October, but even towards the summer, that a lot of places were, as usual, put their merchandise out at least a month or two ahead of the season that's coming. And I learned the hard way because every year before that, for example, Halloween, I used to buy the candy, 1 or 2 days before Halloween. That way we don't eat it, and it's usually on sale. This year, I was hard pressed to find a bag of candy, and the prices were jacked sky high, especially for, we call them in Canada here chocolate bars. The States may call them candy bars. Over in the UK, you may call them sweets, whatever. It was candy. So everything was sold out for Halloween pretty well. Then Thanksgiving, a lot of stuff didn't come in, or it was just stripped clean, like really difficult to find things, and prices were starting to get high. For example, and I've been saying this to you, I pick up, this box of pre-made hamburgers, and yeah, it's a big box store, but we're on a budget, and they've always been about 5.99, 6.99 Canadian. They are now up to between 11.99, 12.99 a box, and I'm finding this with everything. Now, I noticed for Christmas, usually I don't get my shopping done just with the way paychecks fall till just before Christmas this year. Somehow, some way I managed it. I got it all done before. And thank goodness, because things are stripped clean. I even had a hard time finding a turkey. Your wonderful mom was able to find one at a smaller, I think a little bit pricier store, but even she said she can't believe the prices. So, yes, prices are going up. A lot of things I'm finding, especially over the last month, regular staple groceries, I've been having a hard time finding, and that's going to multiple stores, multiple different franchises. I love the store that you're working at, but it is a pricier store to shop at, but you get that for quality, I believe, and local items, because we've never had a bad thing even before you worked there. We've loved to shop at that store for things like meat and specialty items. But yes, definitely, Prices are up. Things, if you see it, you got to buy it, otherwise it'll be gone. The other thing I do want to add very quickly is there was a Canadian trucker that put out a video on TikTok I had sent to me. I believe it was on Tuesday of this week. And he said that there is new legislation going on over here in North America that as a trucker, you must be jabbed. Now, the problem is, he said, there, even if you go with 15% of us, he said, I believe it's much higher. We haven't been required to be jabbed, or we can't bring our loads across, or we lose our jobs, or what'll happen. He said, very quickly, with just 15% of the trucking force missing, he said, your shelves are going to be clean in about 2 or 3 days. He said, because every single thing that people have in their lives, unless you've excuse me, created, made it, or fabricated it yourself, we buy it, and truckers bring that in. So that's coming in the new year. So as I said on previous shows and places I've talked about this, that's not to create fear, that's to give people a heads up that anything you think you might need, it might be a good time. Don't go crazy and like the toilet paper it debacle in 2020, but I would be picking up things that you need extra of just in case.
Well, this has been a concern that we've mentioned it on here before,
Mhm.
is that over the past, say, 20, 30 years, is that a lot of our manufacturing of items has been sourced out to uh, other countries. China
Mhm.
was a big one where a lot of
Yeah.
manufacturing and over there, and we've seen what's happened in the past few years or the past couple of years, even with this pandemic that happened, that supply chains were drastically reduced, and the dependency on getting items, because you got to figure is that if you're building a TV and one item is a majority of items are coming from China, say you're
Mhm.
manufacturing here in Canada or the US or something like that, we don't produce anything here anymore. We don't really
Mhm.
make anything in North America at, at a scale that would be sufficient to be independent, that you wouldn't have to depend on other countries.
Mhm.
And this has always been a topic that has been passed around, but people really didn't really think about this until little squeezes started happening in the supply chain. And just even that boat that went in, is that the Suez Canal?
Yeah, it was.
The
Yeah.
Suez Canal there that blocked off the route there
Shipping
for, I
lanes.
think it was about 5 to 7 days. That they said just with that blocking that canal there, with all the backup of all the ships there, it was going to be about 2 years of uh, of delays that were going to be happening for items that are needed to build other items that these
Mhm.
countries make. See, one thing is made over in one country, and that part component goes to another country. That is the component that's needed to build the phone or the TV or your lawnmower or and just whatever it is. It could be a variety of items, anyways.
Mhm.
Most everything now that people are really dependent on is technology, and a lot of the technology stuff is built in these other countries and that. And the when you, like I said, when you don't produce in home, you're dependent on it from coming from somewhere else. And when that supply chain is slowed, and now like as you're sort of you were brought aware of about uh, transportation of shipping and that, that's going to be a big, huge problem when it comes to food items and components and stuff like that. And that this traveling in between, if they're going to make this still people being this fear that's out there of this of still this problem that we're existing with is unbelievable. And I hear lots of things, and I'm not going to dwell on them anyways, but uh, you have to still wonder about what's actually happening with this, and how is this drastically affecting us more and more and more when the talk was that everything would be back to normal after the first uh, uh, I guess dose was administered,
One
and
promising thing I did see, it was out of Australia this week. It was a female health minister. Excuse me, she was doing a TV broadcast, and she was urging everybody not to be going anywhere. If you're going out, to be wearing a mask, not to be going to social gatherings because she was claiming that they have a large increase in cases,
Mhm.
and the I forget the exact wording, but it was basically a massive percentage of these new cases are among the jabbed.
Mhm.
It's the first time I've heard that publicly by a government official admit it.
Right, and
Hmm.
that's the big problem there too is about where this information and news has been coming from. Actually, there was one thing there I was going to talk about there too. Is just before we went on, I saw this thing from Rebel News there with David Menzies being assaulted by RCMP bodyguards. I believe they were
Oh,
called RCMP bodyguards. They
oh
were true to
no.
JT and the Sunshine Band's uh, bodyguards that were there, and he was just standing on the sidewalk waiting to ask a question. He got roughed up and thrown into a wood fence, and I think they broke his watch and
Wow.
something else there. And it was just sort of amazing that it was sort of done that way. And even the part that was even there is that JT has said that he doesn't consider Rebel News a legitimate news reporting site, even though they've been uh, vindicated by the Supreme Court of Canada to be a legitimate news source. But just because he doesn't like it, he's totally against them. And I guess comes into this whole part about getting information. When, like here in Canada, our news, national news, is funded by the power or the government that's in power, which is
100%. Hmm.
right. So, and they're funded by them. So it's always this thing is that you never bite the hand that feeds, right? So this is a part that we were taught in school back a long time ago, or when I was there in school, is that journalists was supposed to be unbiased, right? You're supposed to have two sides of the argument, everything that there, point counterpoint, pros and cons, and stuff like that. News were never supposed to be pick a side, and we're seeing that here that like even with Rebel News is asking questions that the national news will not ask because who's paying their paycheck, right? The party that's in power, right. So that whole don't want to bite the hand that feeds. So a lot of questions, and this is like I say here on this show a lot of times, is that it's so important to ask questions all the time and find out the information yourself because you just can't believe what you're being spoon fed to yourself all the time from these news medias. And I hear this a lot, even over the past year, where people just parrot what they've heard off of the national news, thinking that that's the be all to end
I
all,
have something
God's
to
honest
add to that.
truth,
Hmm.
and that's a dangerous. I think it's a dangerous way to go forward in your life that you don't question anything, like wonder why the situation is there, and you do the same thing there too as well. There, Laura, is that you have to go and research and
Yeah.
check out who's
Well, I have
telling you
something
what.
to add to that point. I was watching a news broadcast. It wasn't a news broadcast. It wasn't like something from Canada. It was from Canada. It wasn't W5. It's on my phone, so I can't take a look at what it was. But it was a sort of a question answer type show. It was one of the more major networks. It looked like, and there were two female lawyers on there. And the interviewer was speaking to them, and they were talking about what they're finding with the trend with the courts. And this was out of Alberta. And there was a father who did not want his young children jabbed. The parents were divorced. I have dealt with this personally with so many people around the world, speaking to them and talk to people all day long about that. People send me stuff, people got questions, ask me if I've got some information, whatever it may be. And the mother did want them jabbed. So there were two things the lawyer was very upset about. And one was, nope, not Lorelei Gilmore, Phoebe, sorry. I'm Lorilei. Um, anyways, what she was upset about was that the father went to court with the mother about this, but it wasn't in front of a jury or anything. I forget what she called it, but neither of the parents spoke. They just presented their evidence to the judge through their lawyers. The judge took a couple weeks and made the decision. Now, what she did was she completely disregarded the father's evidence and felt that he wasn't acting in the best interest because she went with the narrative from the news and the narrative of what the government had put out instead of looking at all these scientific research studies that were coming out. The one thing I was disappointed because there's been a leaked paper that's been out from Sick Kids since the beginning of August. And for people that don't know what Sick Kids is, it's a world renowned hospital that treats children. And they were very aware of what side effects could be caused by these jabs for young children. And but it sounded like the lawyer brought really great evidence. Like these were well-known researchers and physicians and virologists and what have you. And it sounds like, and these were sort of her words, I'm not saying it word for word, but she felt that the judge went with the narrative of what the government was putting out and what was being quoted in the news. And this seems to be the trend because there was another female lawyer from the same firm, and she deals with laws that pertains to work, basically. And this is the same thing that seems to be happening. And what the secondary lawyer was finding, that the judge seems to be finding in favor of the employer because, you know, you have a choice. You've been given a choice. Either you get the job or you get fired. So that really isn't a choice. So they were really discussing this and all the information. Now the one lawyer who spoke first was very upset because right after the decision had been made by this judge, they put out a statement on Twitter about this case. And she pointed out about how family law is completely private. Any cases, the only people that can access the file are counsel or the people that are involved in the case, such as the parents. And to be putting a statement out there like that to Twitter about what the findings of this case were. So it was quite I didn't get a chance to tell you about this. I mean, we didn't have a lot of time before you came from work, but they made some really good points. But this seems to be what the norm and the way things were going. And these girls were quite vocal. I was really glad that they spoke out about the way things seem to be going with the courts here in Canada. So, interesting situation that we're looking at. The other thing they brought up that was important too, they said, I really wish that we could abolish the word disinformation because it's not disinformation. Anything that people are putting out there, just because maybe it differs from the narrative or differs from the conversation that you're having, it's still information. It's kind of the whole premise of your show, Del. Like you said, you put out all the ingredients out there, stir it up at the end of the episode, and we see what we come out with at the end of in the pot, proverbial pot. But you always tell people, please, if anything resonates with you, go and do your own research. So it was an interesting conversation that I listened to today. It was almost an hour discussion.
Yeah, that's the important thing about there, and that's what sort of I went into this part about even talking about this Rebel News thing is
Hmm.
that even though I don't agree with everything that's there with them, they
And I
do
don't either. Hmm.
right. They do bring up points, and they're asking questions, and that's
Hmm.
the important thing. In that when when you're stopped or stifled from asking questions to something that is there, and I guess the biggest part there is that they do a lot of digging, and they find out they get a lot of
Hmm.
I can't remember what they're called, FISA reports or whatever, or um, government document reports, and
Freedom
that
of
where they
information. So,
Freedom of
yeah,
Information Act. That's the what I'm looking for
FOIA.
there. Yeah,
Hmm.
and they get these stuff to go and look at, backtracking through the part to see how we're getting to the point that we're getting here. And that's the whole part about doing research, and that's the whole part that a real news agency should be asking, right? That it isn't like you see in the States, I guess, with the big four or five that are there. They become entertainment agencies or entertainment vehicles. They're no longer like a news. They're sort of a one-sided opinion,
Hmm.
and and a lot of people take that as being that's the ultimate truth. That's
That's
the
gospel. Yeah, it's gospel.
right, right. So I always find that sort of interesting when I hear people and they start quoting
CNN.
mainstream media news, and just sort of uh, to each their own, I guess. But
Yeah,
I
but it
guess
has
you,
its place. Like
yep,
we take a look at everything because we want to know. And I remember, and I'm going to bring it up. I brought it up many times on your show and mine alone, that when this all started, and I seen you watching one of those agencies, and it's not radio friendly what I said when I walked in the room, but basically I said, "Why are you watching this crap?" And you said to me, Laura, we need to look at everything. We need to know what everybody is saying. And you're right, we do. Because then you pick up the breadcrumbs, if you will, of what you've seen or whatever resonates with you and follow it further. Or even look up what you've seen maybe that you don't agree with and follow the breadcrumbs with that one to find out where did it come from? Where did it originate? Why is this being put out there, right?
yep. Well, I think I told this last week or the week before. Is that I remember doing this debate scenario back in high school, and we were given a topic, and you had to debate the one side of it and come up with all the information on that. And I think it was like over the course of a week. And then the
Mm-hmm.
following week is you had to debate the other side of it against everything that you just did for the
Mm-hmm.
other side. So now you're getting both parts of information, right? Like how to win the debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that always sort of stuck with me. And just thinking about that is that it was so important to gather everything, even though you don't like the outcome of whatever the outcome's going to be out of it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Who knows? But
Mm-hmm.
at least you gather as much information as you can, and that information and knowledge is key. I think it's worth more than gold. I think it's worth
I do too.
than water. It's like it's just unbelievable that that's that I see or hear from so many people that that like it's going to be like talking like an old record there that people just take the one side of uh, of the narrative and they just roll with that.
Let me make a comment here. Hidden, I see you on Twitch there. I refuse to read your comment, but if you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. But we definitely are not talking about relationships and what you should do with your girlfriend. You're welcome to stay if you want to join in the conversation about what we're talking, but otherwise, yeah, we don't see you.
Okie dokie. Yeah. So, what was another thing there to say there? Like I said, there today is December 16th, and we went through. We're up here in northern Ontario, on the shores of Lake Superior, and we had sort of some really weird weather just over the last
Yeah.
little bit.
Wow.
We went through. We had snow like a week ago, and it stayed
Hmm.
sort of pretty cool and snowed off and on. Then all of a sudden, we got to this really warm trend, and then we had rain last night. And then you said, what, after I fell
There was
asleep, that
thunder, showers, and
thun-
lightning. So we should tell
thunder and
people where we
lightning
live.
last night to
Yeah,
come
but we
to
should
that it
tell
was
people where we live. We don't live in the Arctic. We're about
right.
6 hours north of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and about 35, 40 minutes away from the Minnesota border. So we're right smack dab in the middle of Canada. But at this time of year, it's usually pretty darn cold, right?
Yeah, we've had our sort of our fluctuations. Like I say, there's cycles that happen every so many years, I think 12 to 13 years, where we get really warm and then cold, but or we get really big dumps of snow, or not enough there come close to the Christmas time or December 25th. But we were into like yesterday, we had fog, misty rain. When I left for work this morning, and that was at about 7:40 in the morning, it was almost like raining. It was misty rain, foggy, and then I guess just around lunchtime, the temperature just dropped, and then it
Hmm.
became sleety snow, and then almost like blizzard like snow during the afternoon. It's still sort of a little
I
bit
can't
snowing and
believe
blowing wind
last
and
night.
cold.
I can't
Yeah.
believe last night after you went to bed and our son Dell's stepson, he does not like thunder. He's got autism and he usually can hear it. I thought maybe he'd wake up. There was like raging like thunder and lightning for about 15 minutes last night. I could not believe this.
Yeah, so we've had some weird weather, and it was funny. I heard there today is was talking to one of the customers who came in and says, "Oh yeah, that's global warming for you." And I just shook my head. I went, "Oh my God." I said, "Okay, so see that's the that's sort of an example of someone just taking a narrative and just going, that's what see the people get sort of stuck in their belief, right? And they get their own way of thinking this is the way it is, right? And or whatever you want to call it, cognitive dissonance or whatever. They discount everything else because that's what they believe, because that's what they've been told. And we've talked about this many times there about the programming that's going through schools and stuff like that. That the way kids sort of learn. And this is actually getting interesting too, as I sort of sideline. We're going to jump all over the place here. I've been watching many news uh, organizations and talking about getting kids out of public schools through the states, dealing with this gender issues and these secret clubs in the public schools that are not being told about the parents of what their kids are being involved in and being taught. And there's been a couple of things there about teaching about communism or teaching about the LGBTQ, AI plus whatever other letters and symbols are at the end of that one. And this whole wokeism and the way uh, teachers, I guess, in the states, I think a lot of it has been happening around California, San Francisco, LA, and stuff like that, but other places as well too. Is teachers be teaching their own narrative and teaching this to the schools and going away from the regular criteria. And that's sort of a really interesting thing. Is that you figure that if you're in the school system or the public school system, is that you're aware of what's supposed to be taught during the year, and that's what you'd figured your kids would be being taught, correct? And when other things are being added in, uh, you have to really wonder what's going on there. What do you think about that, there, Laura?
Well, there was one thing when you brought that up I wanted to add. I'm going to backtrack a little bit with that court case I talked about with the father losing and the mother winning. The other thing that came out of this court case that was actually quite scary was because the father didn't want the children jabbed and the mother won, based on what we had discussed. The court also added in there, the judge, that the father had certain topics he was only allowed to discuss with his children now. He's completely, I don't know if he'll be charged. I don't know what will happen. He is not allowed to discuss anything regarding medical or anything. There was a whole list of things he wasn't allowed to discuss. This was part of the judgment. On top of that, because the mother was suing for primary decision making over the children's medical. So the judge granted that too. So, because they had always been co involved with the children's medical, as co parenting is. Well, now, yeah, they can continue that way, but if they get into a disagreement in the future, the mother has final say over everything. I could not believe that. So now we're getting back
Wow.
to, I know that was scary. That's what made me think about this when you're mentioning about school. Now, I think the biggest eye opener for me was school because my youngest has severe autism. My eldest was in French immersion, never really had any problems in school. And, we had good lines of communication, but could he tell me what he learned all day in school? No, because like most kids, well, how was school today? Fine, right? You want to go have a snack, go play video games, do whatever. You and I really discovered quite by surprise because our youngest, when he was in school, had quite a few behavioral issues um, with the autism. But what we found out, what was going on in a classroom, you would think, as two parents coming in to kind of see the lay of the land, see what's going on, the environment that our son was going to be going into. If that was their best behavior while we were there, Lord help us. And most of these children that were in this classroom were nonverbal, very, very severely disabled. And again, I understand it's different from regular education. But my whole point, and I've said this to many parents over the last year and a half, how much do you really know about what your children are being taught in school all day long?
Yeah.
Most parents do not have a clue. They think, and then homework comes home. You know this yourself with friends with kids. How many parents have said, I haven't got a clue how to help my kid with their homework? Okay. So there's that. Never mind. Do you have any clue what goes on in that school? Like, unless your kid can come home. I mean, there's been over the last year or two, children, and again, we say if something's not in your bubble, It doesn't become part of your awareness, and we understand that. But for example, with autism, 1 in 10,000 boys was diagnosed about 35 years ago. Depending on where you live now, it's between 1 in 38 and 1 in 52 children being diagnosed, and they are projecting within the next 10 years, 1 in every second child will be born under the spectrum. Now, what the scary part about that is there's levels, different levels of this, but you get some severely affected children like this. Never mind what's going on with neurotypical children. That's the word they use for kids that aren't affected with any disabilities. How much do we really know as parents what our children are being taught? We don't. Like that came from Project Veritas, how we found out, most of us, was an undercover interview where that teacher was to they were teaching Marxism and all kinds of stuff. They had Yao Ming up on the, or not Yao Ming, they had the Chinese president on the, they had all kinds of stuff. How would we find this out if there aren't a few independent news agencies like Rebel News, like Project Veritas, and they're villainized in the mainstream media. But would we have any of us ever known about that? Like now people are starting to look at this, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
Well, I guess the interesting part was because where your youngest there was going to school, he was only going to half days, and
Hmm.
he had to go and take a whatever it was, special transportation there because there was problems with the bus and
Hmm.
he had problems with noise and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But the real, I guess the interesting part that I found was when we went into that sort of well, we went into a couple meetings,
Hmm.
but they'd given us a report card and it had math, history, all these things that he was supposed to be
Hmm.
learning during
Hmm.
his half day in school over the course of the week.
Hmm.
And we went in there and for the part of the day and looked at it, and I think the teacher had spare second period, so he'd be going home after lunch. And the first period he took gym,
Hmm.
and they played a game which is
And the
duck
grade
duck goose.
12s, the 12th
Yeah,
graders
and they were
taught it.
taught by the grade 12 students that they took over the gym class, and they played duck duck goose, and they and I'd ask questions to the SSPs and stuff like, is this what happens like every
You
day?
have to
Oh yeah,
call
this
them
is
support, student support people, they're called
right.
here. Yeah. Hmm.
But I says, yeah, is this what usually happens in, like during the daytime and stuff like that? Like during the course of the week? Says, oh yeah. Says they go in, they play this game. So if once you're out, you sit on the
You
wall
just
for
sit there. Hmm.
so for so that's the amount of exercise for the gym period is, and then the second period before he because he would leave after or leave during the lunch part there and come home because he was only doing half days, is the teacher has her study break period uh,
Second period.
class, and they would have the kids. Some would go on the computer, some would play Crazy Eights, some would
Hmm.
play doodle on papers. I'm going, well, where is he learning
Yeah.
history, math, all these
Science.
in
Hmm.
science, all these subjects that we're getting a report card for? And when we went into that meeting, I went, can you explain this to me? Like, how do you come up with this? And then you find out later on when you do digging and stuff like that is they get paid as the student for attendance, right? That's how they get
Hmm.
their funding at the that's how their funding
Well,
works,
they
right?
got funding for our son too because he had
Right,
one-to-one support. But this is the thing, right? Trying to navigate whether it's a regular school system or special ed system, that just because they got so much money for our son, that didn't necessarily mean that he would get the support person, that they
right,
could put it wherever they wanted. So the things we saw that day, but our whole point is, and we understand that not everybody has a child in the special education system, but what I'm saying is how fortunate we actually were to be able to go in and see this. Because like I said, with my son, oldest son, who had no issues, I didn't have a clue what was going on. And I did communicate with teachers quite regularly, especially in grade school. I would drop them off and pick them up. Um, but that's what I'm saying to you. With two parents working, I understand maybe the situation has changed a little bit now with what's been going on in the last 2 years. But do you really know? And then you come up with this now that's coming out, depending on what country you're in. that if you send your child to school, that's implied consent. They don't have to get your consent to jab up to your 5-year old. That the child, depending on what country, I'm seeing that they're allowing children as young as that to consent to something like this, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, this I guess this is the whole part that I find sort of concerning in a way is that
Hmm.
you have age of consent or age of maturity, or what do you have 16 to get a license. You can't get anything there before. That's the rule of law, anyways,
Hmm.
in basically in North America. You can't drink until you're 19, or in some
In
places in the
Canada.
states, yeah,
Hmm.
in some places in the states is 21. Some other things there, uh, your insurance really doesn't go down, I think, until you're about 25.
Kids can't go on an excursion at school without parental consent, yet they can be jabbed at school without parental
Right.
consent.
Had
Mm.
that part there, and then also then you have the part that I was saying about at the beginning part about what do you know that is being actually taught to your kids, and this is actually comes into this whole issue that's been coming up quite a bit over the past sort of since this lockdown sort of happened when kids were actually at home doing this online schooling and that, and then parents were starting to see what they were being uh,
Yeah.
taught during these Zoom calls and stuff like that, or what they were learning there. And I think there was a lot of people throughout North America, and that started seeing like what is actually being taught in the public school to their kids when they're because now they're getting this sort of awareness because everybody
Hmm.
was sort of locked down. That's sort of a sort of an eye opener, I guess, in a way that I guess it was sort of needed, but I guess that was the little part that people started seeing like what's actually going on here, and you got to wonder about this whole wokeism and SJW and all this other stuff that's being being presented to us now in this whole new climate of social interaction that we have online or in public there, and you hear this stuff. And you just wonder, you sort of just like, how are people actually coming to these conclusions and stuff like that? Like, who's teaching them this stuff? It's very one-sided ideology, I think, in a way. Like, I have many questions about about climate and about environment. And that I did go to school back in the early '90s for environmental engineering, and I did study a lot of this stuff, and I do have a lot of questions about it that I think that these answers are not anywhere close to being told. There's been a lot of things there where these climate people have been talking about that in so many years, this is how it's going to be, and that time has come and gone. Then they keep on moving the goalposts further and further and further. Bills get passed and stuff like this. It's all about money, right? Everything's about money. This whole carbon tax credits and this looking at here, just even in Canada's charging carbon usages on individuals. Uh, Coming up before 2030. There's a lot of things I've talked about before about this Great Reset and the 17 different things that is looking through this Agenda 2030, and a lot of these things are slowly being slipped in uh, now and before and upcoming there. Like we have right now that too is that I talked about this a few months ago is that back in the early part of January is that single-use plastics here in Canada are supposed to be outlawed at the end of this month, at the end of this year. Done, right?
Flashlights?
Single-use plastics,
Oh, plastics. Yeah,
right?
plastics.
So
Sorry.
that's like straws,
No, it just
uh,
cut out. That's all. I couldn't hear what you
yeah.
said.
So anything that's single-use plastics gone, like water bottles, tie rings, plastic forks and straws. I think there's a whole list of stuff like that. That's was supposed to be outlawed here
Yeah,
in
but you know what
Canada.
we said? Okay, because after the big debacle, was it 3 summers ago when kids were, or millennials, I guess, older teenagers, it seemed, were going into stores and licking ice cream? Remember
Oh
taking
yeah,
the,
yeah,
yeah, so then we were going like, why isn't there any safety seals on this stuff? So they really amped up the safety seals. Well, now what are they going to seal it with if there's no
right.
plastic? Mhm.
Yeah, and that's sort of an interesting thing is because just even here alone in Canada, we import a lot of products that come in from other countries that
Mhm.
don't have the same thing. So what are they going to do? Is they going to say, okay, will they stop the import of these products, right? Do companies have to go and get these products and then change them into some sort of a different
Well, just think about lettuce.
container? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. The news, just even our national news, hasn't even they talked about it back in January of this year about what's coming at the end of
Mhm.
the year, but I have seen nothing about this in the news period over the last 5 months, and the
Well,
deadline is like we're what the 16th, so there's only 15 more days till the end of this.
maybe they put it on hold because what I was going to say is think about it. Everything in the grocery store, like I was thinking of cheese, like lettuce, like if you get
Saran wrap, plastic
bag,
bags, right?
yeah, or you get a head of lettuce, it's wrapped in plastic, a lot of
Mhm.
fruits like grapes and like what are they going to do? And then you know what's going to happen? They're going to up the price. If you're going to force a country or it comes in here and then they got to repackage it, isn't that kind of defeating the purpose? Because then you got to take it off, throw it away, and then put it in something else.
Yeah, no, this is I haven't seen this anywhere else recently, period, that this issue that it has come to light. I haven't heard anybody even talking about this, and this was I have it written down here, but I can't even remember somewhere here. Anyways, that was at the end of this year. That's single-use plastics, and I think they had six major items, and there was other ones like stuff like saran wrap that you put in your sandwich, right? Single-use things like that. Supposed to be out, right? Or
You
plastic
know
bags
what
that
was
you pick up your
surprising?
groceries in.
What was surprising to me was when you were starting to watch some of those recycling documentaries
Yeah,
because we do recycle. You and I recycle everything, and then we found out it's a waste of time. Like they don't even recycle 99% of what we've been putting aside to be recycled, right?
yeah. That's what. There's only the first two items. There's I believe it's uh, 7 or 9 plastic categories, and there's only 3 out of the 7 or 3 out of the 9 that are actually recyclables. Other stuff
Hmm.
just goes straight to the landfill.
Hmm.
And the problem is that with recycling, and this is I talked about this a few months ago, is that the cost of recycling and to repurpose old items is way more expensive than it is to create new. And
Hmm.
that's where the big huge problem is. And another part that ended up happening was is that Canada and a lot of with the U.S. used to send their trash over to third world countries. I think China was actually one there that was doing too as well, where they were segregating or separating stuff, and then it was being
Hmm.
recycled and then uh, melted down, made into beads, and then reshipped back and stuff like that. And then they stopped accepting our garbage. So then it went over to I think it was a couple of countries over in the Philippines and that were doing that. So they were outsourcing it over to other countries, these third world countries, and basically polluting those countries, right?
Oh
So
my gosh.
and then doing that, and that's the whole thing is that not the whole thing, but I got to quit saying that. But the part about this whole uh, issue that's never been looked at, and this even goes into this part coming soon now with these green energy cars and solar vehicle cars, is the end result of recycling them afterwards and the toxicity of the batteries and the materials that are made has not even been a thought about, right? We always think about the production and getting it out to the consumer that needs it, but never the end result when it's broken and you have to get rid of it and
And
bring
they
it back
don't
again.
make things like these. They purposely make things that break or have to be replaced every couple of years, it seems, too, right?
Yeah, well, that's yeah. I've mentioned that to you before there about tools and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
have tools, some tools that I've had around for like about 40 years, and
Hmm.
just even the material that it's made out of is way better than the stuff I can get now. Like the stuff I have screwdrivers that are 40, 50 years old that are still in better condition than something I'd
Oh,
buy out of the
screwdrivers are junk
out of the
now.
shelf there today.
Hmm.
But yeah, any part of electronics now, electronics doesn't last. It gets it can't even use anything like that
Becomes
anymore.
obsolete. Hmm.
TVs, I've had five TVs since I've been with you there that have all lasted maybe 3 to 4 years, and then they just burn out inside,
Hmm.
just gone. But we used to have another one. I remember when we were growing up, we had this old Zenith TV at my parents' house. I think we got it back somewhere around, I think it was about 77 or 78. I remember back in when I was living in Toronto, and we had it all the way up to till we got rid of it at 15 Side Road. So that's going to be in the mid to late 80s, mid to late, oh, longer than that, 90s, somewhere in the 90s, I think. And that TV sort of lasted that long. But they just never, they didn't wear out as fast. And that's one thing I'm noticing is that we've noticed it, even when you've done grocery shopping and that, where you go to get groceries, is that we're
Hmm.
finding even the food is not lasting like the
Hmm.
time that it used to last. You've seen that too as well, Adler?
Well, okay, so my son and son-in-law, they grew a garden this year, and they had little baby tomatoes, and they sent them to us this summer in this clean jar with a lid. And I just about died. I forgot they were in the fridge. It kind of got to the back of the fridge. They are pristine. There isn't a bit of mold, nothing whatsoever. Now, could you do that with anything else from the grocery store? No way. Like they aren't preserved in any way, shape, or form. They've just got a lid on it and they're perfect, right? So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, they
I hear what you say.
even with the pickles I made from the garden
Yeah.
there that we got there, and yeah, just I've noticed just stuff, and I'm not saying it's just at any grocery store or whatever, but for the places that you've shopped at, I've noticed that our bread dries out super fast, and it's like oh, that or it goes moldy, like
Yeah.
it can't doesn't even last more than a week.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
just finding that and it's not anything to do with the grocery store. I just think it's the way that this stuff is being made
It's the
now is
products. Yeah, it's not the grocery store's fault. It's the products is what
yeah
it
that
is.
whatever it's coming in from, and it just I've noticed
Hmm.
this even with vegetables, with fruit and stuff like that, that the shelf life on it is not even close to being as long as what it used to be. Like I'd have a cucumber in the fridge, it would last like 3 or 4 weeks. Now it's barely lasts 5 days, and it's already
Hmm.
gone soft or it's starting to just to deteriorate and go down.
We don't have enough time, but you know what I was going to mention? Maybe we do this
Yeah.
again next week or two. Apparently, Mr. JT and the Sunshine Band has put out there that he's considering um, decriminalizing all drugs. Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Well, I don't get to talk to you that much. You come home from work and then he's goes back. He's like he's working every day, so I haven't had time, and we're almost out of time here. We'll have to discuss that, but that's quite the proposition and discussion and debate I watched on that. I'll tell you, it was actually on Rebel News yesterday, I think.
Yeah, and maybe a question out there is that anybody that's listening there is if you've noticed this as well there that you finding that uh, any of your equipment, electronics, or your food or something like that isn't as lasting as long as what it used to, say 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's the thing I'm going to start. Maybe I'm going to look into that a little bit more because I just sort of find that sort of interesting. It's just a question that I'm putting out there. Like maybe you might have had that too as well, or you noticed that as well. And yeah, you know, leave a comment down below, and hopefully I'll be able to go and go through these comments. I'm not sure if that still goes through that people put comments on there. If I can check it out afterwards, I have to look in that too as well. Finding out more and more things there that I have to look into. That makes it sort of interesting. That keeps an interesting spin on stuff, and you have something to look forward to.
Yes.
You want to tell them, Laura, where they can find you and what you got going on there coming up?
Sure. I have my show, The Angel Rock, live on Monday nights from 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, and it's a 2 hour show. This Monday, we're having a Christmas party. We're having a close, good friend of mine. She hasn't been on my show in quite a while, Leanne Clark. I call her the Crystal Wizard, and sometimes we get into some pretty cool discussions about dimensions and time travel, and it's going to be a fun show. So come and join the Christmas party. We're going to have lots of fun. And Deli, thank you for having. Oh, I should also add too, if you want to ever get a hold of me to book a reading or anything like that, energy healing, you can find me on Facebook facebook.com/the Angel Rock. And thanks for having me, Deli.
Okie dokie. And so that wraps up this December 16th from
Excuse me.
the frozen north of us living in igloos and stuff like that. And
And our pet
like I
penguin and polar
yeah,
bear.
there you go. And I guess we're what, 9 days away from Christmas and
That's
2
right.
weeks away from the turn into 22. Okie dokie.
22.
So thanks for tuning in there, people out there on the ether, and we'll check you all next week, Thursday. So have a good
Have a good
week.